What's up everybody? Welcome to another episode of Scales 13. In today's video, I'm going to show you guys a few healthy habits in reptile husbandry that can prevent your reptile from getting sick. Now, as a quick disclaimer, this video is not about bioactive enclosures versus sterile enclosures. This is just about a few healthy habits and a few actions that you can make that can prevent your animal from possibly getting sick in the future or spreading sickness to your other reptiles. Got it. Alright guys, so let's start with the first subject on the list today, biofilm. So what is biofilm? Biofilm is defined as a collection of bacteria on the bottom of your water bowl. Have you ever picked up your water bowl before when you're changing your pet's water and feel like a slimy residue adhered to the bottom of the bowl? That would be biofilm. Now, the issue with biofilm is that it can cause a lot of health problems for your pets. Not only reptiles, but also cats and dogs as well. It's been linked to respiratory infections, issues with the kidneys, and can even have issues with an animal's dental hygiene. Now, how do we prevent biofilm? Well, one way to prevent biofilm that I like to do is basically just to change out your water every so often. You don't want to leave water sitting in there constantly. You don't want to be that guy who just goes, oh, my reptile's running low on water, I'm always topping off the water. Because the thing is, if you have bacteria inside your water bowl, and since the bowl is constantly filled with water, the bacteria continues to survive and populate in your animal's water dish. An easy way to check for biofilm is to basically just take your animal's water bowl, pour out the water, or even if the water's still in there, doesn't really matter, and just run your finger along the bottom to see if you feel anything slimy. If you feel something slimy, it's time to scrub the bowl. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you need to use anything that has strong chemicals like bleach or something like that, which I wouldn't really recommend because that can be harmful to your pet. There's a few pet-friendly cleaners that you could use in order to clean your animal's water dish, and it's always good just to give it a good scrubbing every once in a while as well. But one practice that I like to do is basically just switch out your water bowl. So what I'll do sometimes is I'll use different water bowls in my animal's tank. So what I'll do is I'll pull the old water bowl out, basically scrub it, let this one dry out, and I'll add a new water bowl that hasn't been filled with water in a while to the animal's enclosure that more than likely won't have any waterborne bacteria growing in it because it's been kept dry. Now, here's another place where biofilm may be harboring. So as a prepared reptile keeper, one thing that you would normally like to do is to keep a bottle of dechlorinated water always on hand, so that way if you discover that your reptile's humid hide is losing moisture or its substrate, whatever, if your enclosure needs humidity, you can always add to the enclosure. If this thing is constantly filled with water, there is a chance that bacteria could be growing in it because it was never scrubbed down and it never had a chance to thoroughly dry out. So me personally, in my reptile keeping now, this is what I tend to do. So whenever I'm done misting down my blue tongue skinks enclosure or spraying down the humid hides for my leopard geckos, what I like to do is basically just take whatever water I have left, water my plants in the windowsill, and leave this thing bone dry. I take off the top and I just let it dry out. The reason I do this is because I don't want bacteria accumulating in this thing, because if bacteria is in an environment that's closed off, that's the correct temperature for it to grow, there's a huge range there depending on what bacteria we're talking about, but we're not going to get into that. And if there's constant moisture for it to grow in, boom, bang, boom, this could be a breeding ground for bacteria. So what I like to do is just leave it dry if I'm not using it. And the next time I need to fill up my enclosures, I just make some water right away, use it, and once I'm done with that water, just dump it out. Now here's a tip that I picked up from a few other reptile keepers. Tongs. So basically, if you look at these tongs, what do you see written right there? Leopard gecko. This one's for Tim. That one says Aki. this one is for thunder. So basically my new practice now is I'm going to keep separate tongs for each animal that I have. It actually gave me a chance to buy a couple different types of tongs. Like you see here, I have the ones with the black rubber grip on it, and they're curved. And this is just your standard straight tongs that don't have a rubber grip on them. I also have another pair, where's that other pair? Here it is, that has the rubber grip, but doesn't really have as much of that curve that you would see in this one. They're a little bit more straighter, so I just wanted to see what would actually work best. So what's the purpose for me using these tongs? Well, the reason I'm using separate tongs for all my animals is there's always a chance that an animal could be coming down with something. Basically, if one of my reptiles is sick and I don't know, there's a chance that I could wind up spreading the bacteria from that animal's mouth to all the other reptiles in my collection if I keep using the same tongs over and over again. So what I'm gonna start doing now is using separate tongs for each animal, and I'm also going to be routinely cleaning my tongs after every feeding, just to make sure that if an animal is sick or if there's any bacteria on it growing from leftover food that may be stuck to the tongs, that I'm not transferring that back to my animal and my animal's not gonna get sick basically just because I didn't think ahead. Good boy. Hey, buddy, I know that you're... Hey, come on, relax. Thank you. Thunder. You're a goof. All right, you ready? Hey, the food over here, hey. Good boy. Whew, good boy. You right, bud? What's up, Panther? Alright guys, so the third subject that we're going to talk about is having moist substrate. So guys, it's just a good idea to mix up your moist substrate in your reptile's enclosure just to make sure that there's no bacteria pockets forming there. Even if you have a bioactive soil, it's just a good idea. Even if you've layered it here and there, it's good to just get that soil moving just to make sure that there's no stagnant areas that are soaked with excess moisture. Today I'm actually going to go in Panther's enclosure and I'm just going to mix up this guy's cypress mulch just to make sure that I'm not having any bacteria forming in this guy's substrate. Woo, all right, well, that was fun. Well, for me anyway, not for our boy over here. But yeah, so that's just something that I do just to make sure that there's no bacteria breeding and forming below the animal substrate, just to make sure that he's nice and healthy and doesn't run into any problems as he's digging around and rooting through the substrate, so that way he doesn't run into anything that'll make him sick. Another thing guys, as you're going through your reptile's enclosure, when you're mixing up that moist substrate, make sure you pick out any excess feces you might find. Now, microfauna will break down any poop that you'll actually find in an animal's enclosure, but if there's any urates in the enclosure, make sure you pick those out, because your microfauna will not break down and eat the urate sacs that your reptile will produce. So guys, just to keep your other reptiles safe, whenever you bring in a new animal, make sure that you keep it in a separate room in an enclosure by itself, just to make sure that if it did come in with something that could make your reptile sick, that you're not spreading it to the rest of your pets. Just so that way, if one animal needs a vet bill, you only have one animal to stress about, and you only have one animal that's in danger, versus multiple animals, which would be an even higher vet bill and more than twice the amount of stress. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm Scales, that's Panther. We're out.